Monica Schneider. My name is Monica Schneider. I am the current Access and Functional Needs intern with NOLA Ready. I've been working with Peter Edmondson for the past year, and we are excited because today we have some members from the NCIU team and the health department here to join us and speak to NCIU. We have Mr. Benjamin Winger, we have Mr. Travers Kerr, and we have Ms. Taisha as well. So I'm going to turn it over to them. I know that they're really excited to answer any questions y'all may have, as well as they have a little presentation to provide as well. So.
Well, okay. I'm Ben Winger. I'm the coordinator for the MCIU on the New Orleans side, the health department, and I work with Travers and Taisha very closely. And if we could just finish with introductions, I can begin the PowerPoint.
Thanks, Ben. My name is Travers Kerr. I'm licensed clinical social worker at the New Orleans Health Department and the manager of our behavioral health programs. One special program that we began about 6 months ago is something called MCIU that we're ecstatic to get off the ground and happy to talk about today too. And I'm going to pass the mic for our last introduction to Taisha Rhodes, who is our project director for MCIU.
Hello, I'm Taisha Rhodes, and also go by Taisha Davis. So it's the same, one and the same. I'm a licensed clinical social worker as well. And as Ben and Travers both say, I work very closely with them, but I direct all the day-to-day operations for MCIU. And thank you for having me today.
Okay.
And I'm sharing my screen. Can everybody see that all right?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Okay, let's dive right in. June 1st, the MCIU, a mobile crisis intervention unit, was launched. What is the mobile crisis intervention unit? MCIU is a community-based behavioral crisis responder model integrated within the local 911 emergency dispatch system that for most people know as in our area as the Orleans Parish Communications District. When you dial 911 and you ask for police or ambulance or fire, now you can request mobile crisis intervention unit for behavioral crisis interventions. Why do we serve? Well, as you can see, 911 communication data from April 2018 to June 2021 indicates that about roughly 3,000 calls per year, or roughly 8 calls a day, could have been diverted to an more appropriate level of care in response by behavioral crisis teams. And that's what the MCIU's mission is all about, giving the appropriate care. We serve in Orleans Parish. And who do we serve? We serve any persons, regardless of age, who has notified the 911 system that someone they're witnessing is experiencing a nonviolent mental health crisis emergency. Who takes the calls are at OPCD or at the 911 operating center. There are call takers there that dispatch directly to behavioral crisis responders from RHD, which is our contractor, has a contract with the city. And this is a local organization that has been providing behavioral health services since 1992. So they're very much established here in New Orleans and in the state. So, and they have the resources and the capabilities to take on such a project. What type of calls does MCIU respond to? MCIU responds with intent on intervention and de-escalation to mental health crisis calls that do not involve weapons in the act of suicide or threats of violence. Basically, if you meet the criteria for MCIU, they will be dispatched within about 4 minutes. The mission of MCIU. The main mission is to become the fourth branch of the 911 emergency response system, specializing in innovative behavioral crisis health care. Two main goals is receiving and diverting some mental health calls away from law enforcement and other emergency providers when appropriate, to improve the immediate mental well-being of community members who call 911 for mental health crises in the least restrictive form of care necessary. And goal 2 is to decrease the dependency on emergency departments as a primary crisis intervention center. And hopefully we can even reduce recidivism within the jail system as well. MCIU, this is a beginning model. It has grown since then, but this is the makeup of the MCIU response teams, and they're made up. They respond in marked vans, handicap accessible vans that have 2 people or at least 2 crisis workers in the van. The crisis workers can be master level without license, or with license, bachelor's level, or certified peer support specialist. Each team is supervised by a lead clinician, such as Taisha, and others fully licensed mental health professionals. The shifts, they're running 24/7, 365 days a year, rain or shine. And we even maintain in disastrous situations, and we respond in that way as well. The 2 teams are staffed from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. And the overnight team is from 11 p to 7 a.m. But we have found out, as we're still growing, that we may need all 3 teams are deployed during the peak times, which is around 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. But that fluctuates, and we're learning as we go.
Aisha, perhaps this is a good opportunity to jump in if there's anything you want to add about who's on your teams, how they're responding, how many teams you have throughout the day, sort of what that looks like and what the community could expect if someone calls MCIU.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Throughout the day, we mostly, especially Monday through Friday, we have 3 teams running from about 9 a.m. to about 8 p.m. at night. We've saw that we need to extend the amount of teams that we have to be able to address the call need. And so we run 3 teams pretty consistently. And we have a fully licensed clinician oversees all the teams throughout 24 hours a day. Actually, there's always a fully licensed clinician available to support the teams. They are sometimes on scene on a higher acuity cases. The fully licensed clinician is on the scene. It just depends on the scheduling and who or what we have available for that day. So on a daily, 7 days a week, you can always anticipate us having somebody available to respond to the crisis call that may come in through the 911 system. We use a dispatch first model. So at the time of the call, the teams dispatch out to the assigned address. While en route, the team calls back. So we, as long as you give a good working phone number, you can anticipate a call back from one of the responders, just kind of beginning to gather some information, demographic information what's going on, and then they most times can give you an ETA, like they're on their way, they'll be there in a couple of minutes, etc. And that will begin it, and then when they arrive on scene, they begin to engage. So that's typically our typical day, how things go. I'm done. Ben, you could go to the next slide. So this is kind of, I guess, the data of like the number of calls that we take versus what has come in, the total number of mental health calls versus the numbers we take. We I guess up until 2/12/4, we have taken 1,336 mental health calls. The total number NOPD has received is 3,120. So we have consistently maintained the average of maintaining about 30% of all mental health calls, which gives us a breakdown of an average between 7 to 8 calls a day. Kind of goes back and forward a little bit, but I think the average has kind of remained the same. 26% of all calls have resulted in MCIU transporting individuals to care, and 86% of them have been admitted. We do use like a warm handoff. So if we're on scene and someone needs to go to the hospital, we do providers. Also, we use the least restrictive method possible. So a lot of our interventions are seeing what natural supports with other providers that someone is tapped into. We try to just use an inclusive method. And we have had great outcomes with either voluntary or being able to connect to resources, safety plan, maintaining in the community. Involuntary admissions are our least, we try to use that as the least resort to get the care that's needed for the individual.
Some of the things I'd like to quickly highlight in this particular data set too is according to NOPD's CIT report from 2022, about 81% of the people that they saw in a mental health crisis, they took to an emergency department as a form of crisis resolution. And so while MCIU is taking about a quarter of the people that they see to the emergency department, that is a huge reduction in relying really on the emergency department to solve a mental health crisis. And so, you know, Taisha's team is doing a great job to really figure out, are there other ways that we can resolve crises in the field? The other thing I wanted to sort of highlight is the 86% admission rate too, which generally means that if Taisha's team is seeing someone that needs to go to the hospital, they're getting admitted for it. So the psychiatric team at our local hospitals are also believing that someone is in really sort of an acute critical care. So it's a new approach to how we're doing things by removing police and bringing people like Taisha and her team to those in crisis out in the street. So those were a couple of elements on this slide that I also wanted to highlight before we move on.
And another thing I'd like to highlight is that's over 5,000 NOPD CIT calls last year. And that gives you an idea of how many calls NOPD were answering, and 81% of them are winding up at the hospital. To give you some more background. So MCIU has been very effective in their expertise, and their admission rates shows that they're thinking alongside with other mental health medical staff at the hospital as well. Just this past week, this is what it looks like in collecting data for just a week between November 27th and December 3rd, which represents 1 week, and MCIU has received according to our CAD data that's from the 911 center, or what we call OPCD. And that they had about 45 calls. The calls that were sent back that were not appropriate for MCIU was 1. The canceled by Carla, which is the CBC, 1. Gone on arrival is 2. Non-transport, but they were treated on the scene, is about 5. Phone, we also have the MCIU also has the option to assess and to treat crises over the phone, is about 5. Support, that's going to be in co-response or site consults with NOPD, EMS, fire, or any of the other branches. And that's 16, and we transported 15 to the hospital. The MCIU, we are launching this month on the 13th, our community advisory board that will be working with MCIU and other emergency responders in making and with Vera. We're going to be working with the Vera Institute of Justice in formulating these community advisory board. These are citizens just like yourselves that have had either lived experiences or professional experiences in the mental health care arena. These are open to Orleans residents. There's going to be a 9-member board, voting board, and we're going to have non-voting members that are usually going to be someone like myself, Taisha, representatives of the Critical Response Network, and a few other, maybe some 988 individuals and some homeless, of people that work with the homeless. The cab will, like I said, the cab will consist of 9 people. The goal of the cab is to provide insight, transparency, and oversight within MCIU program development for future growth and sustainability, and to also better improve the 911 emergency response system. Let's see, I can't see the bottom there. The cab will meet annually. We'll meet quarterly. Hold on, got something blocking. And we'll provide an annual report to the City Council's Quality of Life Committee. They will be reviewing data, getting advice, and we'll be getting feedback from the community. This is a grassroots effort so that the health department can keep their pulse on the city. Moving on. Is that it? Okay, this is a picture of the crew. And what you see is what you get. Their expertise is in this field. We find it better to be plain clothes, not in any uniform or threatening characteristics. We do not have sirens. We do not have lights and stuff like that. So I'm very proud of this unit and what they have accomplished thus far, and I'm looking forward to more exciting growth and development as we move forward into the future. And that's the end of my presentation. And I'm open for any questions.
Yeah, we have a question in the chat. Why don't we go ahead and answer that question, and then we can take a 10-minute break at 12:30. Let our interpreters kind of have a moment, and then we'll come back in 10 if that sounds good. But the question in the chat, the first one, is there any support from MCIU in Spanish or other languages, from Angelo?
Yep, that's a great question, and I'm happy to have maybe Taisha jump in and answer that question.
So we do offer, if we do get someone that speaks Spanish, we do have a Spanish speaking line that assists with the whatever language that we may need. We use the language line unless we have a staff member that is trained to speak in that language. We do have, I think, one staff member part-time staff member that is trained in Spanish, but if should there not be on shift, then we do use tools such as the language line to assist.
Right. And we also have on our community advisory board as part of our 9 members, very diverse board. You know, not only do they have different types of expertise in the lived experiences in the medical arena and in the mental health arena, we do have Spanish and Vietnamese speaking, and it's very culturally diverse. So we're looking into those communities. We're focused into those communities as well. So if that answers your question, hopefully.
Great, and I think we have time for one more before we break. So from Claire, could you give some more information about what kind of training the crisis teams have received on how to serve autistic individuals, as well as any people with communication differences who cannot rely on speech to be heard and understood?
I'll take that one as well. So the crisis team goes through pretty extensive training. We do about 40 hours of what we call in a classroom. It's basically composed of de-escalation, psychopharmacology, documentation, assessment. So those 40 hours are in the classroom in specific to autism and communication disorder communication. We do some specialized training with like kind of what's best practices. Obviously, those best practices may not be the best practice for the client that we're serving, right? So we use client-centered care, and we're kind of unique in the sense of what works best for that client. So that's part of the information that we obtain in the assessment en route. Like, what does that person need? We have some standards, but then specifically it's person-centered. So what does that person need and how can we best assist that person? So we do depend on collaterals or any information that we can get. Should that person not have that, we're going to go with what's the best practice, and any person with some sort of communication or any requiring anything other than maybe the standard things, that fully licensed person is fully involved. So those interventions are being driven from a fully licensed clinical person, either be LCSW or LPCS, or they're driving those clinical interventions. So we just kind of use the client, what works for that client. So client-centered is really what we do. And so every situation could be different. And that's what we tailor the need based on what that person may need.
I just have a quick follow-up question to that. I'm wondering kind of how that works in terms of caretakers, like how closely you or if you've encountered experiences with caretakers and kind of what that looks like for you all as a team.
Absolutely. We have experiences with caretakers versus clients. It's a bad day, it's a good day. So the caretaker may communicate one thing, the client may communicate something different. So that's why we just kind of take it all in as part of the assessment to just determine what is that best practice. There's no one situation that's the same, right? We may get the same results, but no one situation is the same because everybody is different. And that's the uniqueness of our services, is that we really want to cater to what is going on the here and now and focus on just that. Because here and now is what crisis is. It's not, sometimes it's what precipitated the event, but it's certainly not what happened a period of time ago. It really focuses on what is going on now and what can we do to help resolve that right now in that moment. And so the caretaker plays an important role, but if there's not a caretaker, we try to seek as much information as we can to determine what is the most appropriate intervention.
And keep in mind that in starting this new concept, the community advisory board, we do have people that are skilled in sign language, and as well as I've said, other languages. And as we evolve, we'll be developing and recruit for MCIU. We'll be looking to fill any gaps or any voids, but we're very aware of the exceptions to the rules, and we are constantly trying to prepare for those types of interventions.
Thank you. So let's take a break. It's about 12:30 or a minute two. And we will come back in 10. And I will see you all in 10. Okay. Here we go. So let's welcome back everyone. Just making sure all our MCIU folks have returned before I dive into these questions. Hey, Ben. Okay, so I'm going to keep rolling so we have enough time. We've got two really good questions in the chat. So the first one is from Mark Bolton, and the ask is, do these calls support require 911 calls referrals prior to the MCIU dispatch, or can anyone call directly to you?
That's a great question. And I'll jump in and see if I can address this one. We right now are using 911 solely as the method to getting our MCIU team out and to the appropriate place. We don't have an alternative number to dial for this. Part of it is that we're using our 911 operators as screeners. So our calls are getting screened by our 911 dispatchers. It's as we're sort of connecting with the 911 system, I guess we want to make sure that we're really taking mental health calls that aren't going to 911 that are maybe more appropriate for EMS or a police department. And so generally what happens when you'll call 911 is you'll let them know sort of what the what's going on. Our 911 operators will try to determine sort of what the primary reason of the call is. And so if that is a mental health crisis, emotional crisis, they'll ask about 4 probing questions. One is, are there weapons present? The second is whether or not the person is exhibiting violent behavior. The third is if they are in imminent danger of harming themselves or others. And the last is whether or not there's a medical emergency present. And so if you can answer those 4 questions in the negative, those the MCIU should be dispatched to the scene. Because the volume is so high, and because we're kind of using our 911 screeners right now for this service as a group to ensure that we're getting mental health calls, or behavioral health calls, right now that we don't have an alternative to get in touch with this team. I know there are some other crisis teams that do exist in the community. We're very proud of the work Thais is doing because she's very responsive. Our response rate for these calls has been about 15 minutes. So answering 1,300 calls in 15 minutes is really impressive from our side. But part of that is to ensure that we're not also overwhelmed with it too. So that's the short answer. That may change in the future. Our community advisory board, has been alluded to, is getting off the ground, and that might be something that they want to address as well too. And we'll certainly take that under consideration. And if that's something that the community wants changed, then we'll look into how that might be possible. But as of right now, that's the only access to our MCIU team.
And might I add, just like with police or any other first responder, there are avenues to address administrative issues, complaints, and things like that, where you can call RHD directly or the health department. And we also take compliments as well.
Great. So then we also have, just to address real quick, we have somebody who is trying to call in, so they can listen from their phone. I just wanted to make sure that we saw that, KJ or Liam, so maybe we can assist them real quick. And then, so from Brandy, the next question, as for language services, How would MCIU approach if a deaf individual is in need? Language line video calls sometimes don't call. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Let me start over. Language line video calls sometimes don't benefit for those in mental health episodes. Live interpreter in person with experiences of levels would be needed for this kind of situation to prevent lots of confusion and frustrations on each individual.
That's a great question. Do we still have Taisha with us too? I'll let her jump in, and if not, and I'll do the best I can to.
Maybe I could shed some light on that as well. I also have extensive experience in the field as a RN charge nurse on the 3rd floor at Charity, and also as an EMT and as a police officer. And when we were to confront, situations where there's a communication issue, we can get on our phone and see it and check around with other first responders to see if we do have someone that speaks the language or signs, or we connect with each other in that network to try to resolve that problem. And I would assume that MCIU would take the appropriate action in doing so to clear up the call itself in the interest of the client. The main goal is to meet the person where they are, and we can't do that if we can't communicate. So I think it's important that we are recruiting for those type of individuals, but we're still growing in that area. These are the type of questions and types of issues that will be addressed, as Travis alluded to, the board as well.
And just to sort of add to that too, what I've been told with some of the few instances in which MCIU has responded is they've tried to determine sort of what was the preferred method of communication. It sounds like they've used a couple before. One is using the immediate family supports as a way of interpreting. Another one is writing, and a third is sort of the televideo one as well too. But as I would also venture to say that this is something that we're new at. We're learning as we go, and if there are people that are interested in on sitting or on showing up to our community advisory boards, this would be a great space for us to really learn from people with a depth of experience. So encourage that, and be happy to share those dates as we get them.
And what we're finding out is that as they grow, as we evolve, we're finding all these challenging calls. No call is the same, and so it's really adaptability. And like I said, they are recruiting, but this type of social work or this type of counseling is not the typical counseling or social work that you do in a clinical setting. This is out in the street. This is dealing with the public one-on-one, and we're looking for a specific type of clinician, or a specific type of caregiver or crisis worker. This is a whole nother and really a new frontier for social work and the mental health service industry.
Yeah, follow-up comment to Brandy's question and comment from Sherry is that the Deaf Action Center has a contract with the local hospitals to provide sign language interpreters. And a comment from Brandy, you can feel free to email me. Myself as a parent, I don't use my family or my children to be involved in those kinds of situations as my signers, but as for others, they have their own beliefs. You are right to ask what their preference is more important. I have a question, and I think you did kind of touch on this, but could you kind of go through once more, like how, like, from the time the call is received and kind of like the steps and like what that looks like for your team, just to kind of paint a picture of kind of how the operations work.
Yep, absolutely. Happy to do that. So we'll take any call that comes into 911. That could be the immediate caller in crisis. That could be a caregiver, family member, or that could be just a bystander too, who's witnessing someone that's acting bizarrely and has sort of some concerns about sort of just about them in general, right? So this can be anybody calling 911 for someone in what's perceived to be a mental health or a behavioral health crisis. There's no age requirement here. You can be as old as we have people living in our community, or young as well too. And so the first thing that'll happen, right, is you call 911 and they ask you, what's your emergency? And so 911 goes through this screening process to determine, right, is this a criminal act? Is this a burglary or a theft of some kind, right? Is there a victim involved? Is there danger? And so if they determine, right, that the primary reason for calling is related to a mental health, behavioral health, could be substance use, crisis, they'll ask a couple of probing questions. So they'll ask, are there weapons present? Is the person currently exhibiting threats of violence? And this is, of course, something that can be up for interpretation as well too. So if you're a call taker and you're really looking to get MCIU out, I would try to be as specific as possible about how that person's behaving, so we can really determine whether or not it's appropriate for us or for another first responder. The two other questions, right, are about whether or not the person is in imminent risk of harming themselves or others. And the reason, right, is that we want to get an immediate response. But 15 minutes is great, but if someone is needed in 3 minutes, right, we want someone with lights and sirens that can be there. And then the last one is whether or not the person is in a medical emergency. And you know, the people that come out in teams of 2 from MCIU are trained in our behavioral health services. They are not medics, right? And so if someone is having sort of a medical emergency, we want to make sure that EMS is the first person that's going to be on the scene. And so when those questions are answered, and if you can answer no to each of those 4 probing questions, the 911 dispatcher will dispatch MCIU to the scene. And what Taisha has done, which we appreciate, people might have different experiences with some of our other crisis services, is that she's implemented a model that she calls dispatch first and assess en route. And so if there's an active phone number, she's going to call, or her team will call that phone number on the way to the scene to see if they can get some more information about what's going on. But when dispatch gives her the address, and her team is going and then trying to figure out sort of what is it that they can sort of think through on their way there to ensure that their response time is quick. So you shouldn't be getting lots and lots of questions that are screening people out of this service. So you should be getting somebody that's on the way, trying to figure out sort of what's going on and how can we get sort of a few steps ahead before we even get out of the van too. So I hope that helps to answer your question.
Yeah, that's helpful, just to kind of paint the whole picture of what it looks like from the time the call is made to making contact with the person. It looks like Leticia has a question. I know that we're having people type it in the Q&A, but Amarani, are you able to speak to interpret by chance? Not sure if that's going to come through, so we might have to follow up with you, Leticia, after to make sure that your question is definitely answered. Is there anybody else with anything they would like to ask or comments that would like to be made while we have MCIU here?
There's someone with their hand raised. I will allow them to talk, if that's okay with you guys. Never mind, they lowered it. Sorry about that.
Monica, I just wanted to readdress the issue of looking for that unusual call, anticipating a call. We are looking and we are working with NOSEF here in getting some certification in autism. We are open to any offers for that, and if anyone thinks that they can contribute to making this initiative better, the Community Advisory Board is an open forum, and we would love to have anyone with any good intentions and ideas, and also any problems that may come up that we need to resolve in making this a better emergency response system all around. Come to the meetings. We're right now we're having orientation meetings, but we hope to start our public meetings more in about 3 months. So stay tuned.
Thanks, Ben. We have in the chat from Mark, great resource and service. Kudos to you and your team for providing such a valuable asset. Yeah, and I want to echo that as well. I also appreciate you all being so open to feedback, and naming that this is a relatively new service, and your willingness to grow and hear from the community on how to do better. I think that's incredible. So thank you all for being here. If there's not any more questions or comments, yeah, I think we can. From Twee, can we get a copy of the PowerPoint by chance?
Yeah, absolutely, Monica. If you've got it, if you want to share that with everybody, by all means.
Yeah, I would love to. That sounds good. I'll send it out after the meeting.
And thank you, Monica, for allowing us to come on there and explain MCIU. We are trying to get the word out, and I will have some brochures out with the message shortly from the health department. So, thank you for helping us again and getting the word out.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and I want to thank Bambi for allowing us to use her lunch and learn space. This is the EMDAC lunch and learn that is held once a month, and she so openly allowed us to come on here and share this information. So I really appreciate that as well. So if we can thank her as well, that would be great. Great. Well, if there's nothing left, I guess thank you all for coming. Again, I really appreciate you, Ben and Travers, for showing up today, and for everyone who came to listen.
Yep. Thank you.
And